Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Rocket Lab Weekly. We are closing in on the magic 52 number. We are at episode 44 of 44 straight weeks of doing Rocket Lab Weekly. Matt, who is practically a co-host at this point, is with us. Thank you for being here. And we also have Scotto here with a brand new magic setup. So how is everyone's week been?
This setup's so magical. I need to leave. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Worries. It's been a volatile week for me, man. As I assume a lot of investors out there, it's been quite tough. You know, at some points I saw over $50,000 down in the portfolio in a single day, and you know, you being so concentrated in a couple stocks, I'm sure you saw some tough times as well. Yeah. But you know, at the end of the day, it happens, right? And I think somebody explained it pretty well. It's like an escalator going up and an elevator going down, right? It just goes straight down sometimes. And but you have to think we really haven't had this much reprieve in the market since October of 2023. So it's really been 9 months of really high quality up and to the right. And then while we did have a couple 4 or 5% down days, not down days, but down weeks rather. Over the past 9 months, it really hasn't been this far of a reprieve. So I welcome it. You know, even though we had some really good earnings from a lot of great companies, we did see some weakening of the consumer, and coupling that with, you know, just the exorbitant prices people are paying for some of these stocks, it makes sense that some of it comes back in alignment. I don't think that the stock market has gotten relatively cheap, you know, just with this small reprieve, but at least valuations are coming a little bit back to where they should be.
Yeah. Scott, how has your week been?
It's been pretty busy. Thankfully, I've been busy enough to be distracted from the market. I think I checked it on like Thursday, and I'm like, oh boy, what's going on? And funnily enough, I accidentally became a Redwire investor this past week. I had a limit order placed like last month or something, I guess. And then on Friday, it was like, hey, confirmed. I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh, right. So I guess I'm on the Redwire team now.
That's almost like writing a put option, but you didn't get paid for the waiting. Well, congrats for being a Redwire investor. It's interesting because I have been thinking a lot about this market correction, and you know, like Meet Kevin, for example, has turned extremely bearish, and he thinks that being in the IWM is like the stupidest thing that you can do. And I kind of can understand his viewpoint or from where he's coming from. But I also feel like there's nothing new that we didn't know in the market. Like we knew that the interest rates were going to bite at one point, and we knew that, you know, like the Fed was trying to make the unemployment numbers go up. We knew that the higher interest rates take money away from the consumer. And I was really like trying to look at the stocks that I own. And for example, like Rocket Lab is not a consumer stock. So I feel that Rocket Lab being sold off on the news of there's going to be a consumer recession is almost like a, how do you call it? You know, like this dip from heaven that doesn't make any sense. Because Rocket Lab, if the interest rates go down, will just benefit from, because I feel like that there's two economies, you know, the haves and the have-nots. And then, yes, the consumer is weak, but the investors that have money, they're going to work the same exact way they have been working the last 100 years. And if the interest rates go down and you don't get 5% on the US Treasury anymore, you have to get return on your money. And you have to invest that money. And you know, where are you going to put that money? And I think Rocket Lab is a very good place to put that money. So I'm just curious, are you guys, if you're looking at your portfolio, I mean, mine is like Palantir and Rocket Lab, and none of them are consumer companies. And I think that these dips are very welcome. Like we had a very nice run, and I think it's just going to build a very nice base to continue running from here. But if you guys are looking at your own portfolios, like, is there any part that you're worried about, or is there anything what I said that you disagree with and you think that we should be very careful with Rocket Lab or other stocks?
I'm personally not too worried, but I've also kind of been more on the cautious side, kind of leading into like maybe for different reasons, but I am a little cash heavy compared to usual lately. So I'm kind of braced for the storm, so to speak. So I'm not too worried. We'll kind of see where it goes. It hasn't fallen far enough for me to be buying, well, except for red wire accidentally, but intentionally be buying. So I'm doing fine. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, so now that we're getting kind of a second round of, well, I never really did 1Q updates, but I'm starting to go through the round of updating a lot of my Seeking Alpha articles from kind of the January, February time this year. So, hopefully a lot of those were after the fiscal year 23 earnings, and now we're kind of getting into the second quarter, and I think things have done relatively well. I mean, for me, I always look at things from a 10-year perspective, right? I'm not really trying to jump in and out. Rocket Lab has always been a very long-term focused investment for me. Same thing with Palantir, and same thing with Dutch Bros and things like that. And if it's not, I might take a swing trade here and there, but a lot of the time it's that money just goes right back into the S&P 500. Or if it's a non-core position or ends up being a non-core position, I end up selling it and putting it into what are the core things. But am I a net buyer? I did buy some Rocket Lab, 2,400 shares or so. What was that, Thursday or Friday? And then actually what might have been Friday morning, because I got $4.68 was the buy price. So it wasn't too bad. Wasn't as good as what we saw probably 2 months ago, but in the high threes, but can't complain with $4.68 because that's below my cost basis at the moment. But in terms of other positions that I'm buying, no, I'm selling a lot of puts. So I sold some puts. I don't know if I sold more for Rocket Lab, but I sold some for SoFi. I sold some for NEXT. I might have sold some for Rocket Lab. No, in fact, I sold 50 contracts for Rocket Lab. I don't know why I forgot about this one. 50 contracts for Rocket Lab, $5. So I sold it too early. I think I sold this on Tuesday or Wednesday. 50 contracts, $5, and I got 80 cents a piece for that. Actually, I think it was 76 cents a piece. I wanted to get 80, but I had to go to 75, and I think it filled at 76. So it ended up being like $3,000 worth of premiums in order to buy about 5,000 shares worth. So I was okay with that because, I'm getting close to 20,000 shares on my own, and I'd like to get to 25,000. So my hope is I could either create some income associated with that or have to find, the $25,000 or whatever that cost is to be able to buy that additional 5,000 shares. So it'll be end up in the end of things. It'll be fine. Trying to think if there's any other. That's really it for now that I can think of. Yeah.
Okay, so you're not worried, for example, about Dutch Bros at all because they're like more of a consumer-facing company. Starbucks is doing horrible. McDonald's is doing horrible.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out about Dutch Bros on the 7th. That's when they report. But overall, I mean, there's one that's right next to my house now that opened up. Normally, I'd have to travel, 10, 15 minutes. Now there's literally one within 5 minutes. It's on the way to work. So I've been going there once or so a week, and always a line. Very rarely have I been the only person to pull up and get my order taken. There's always a couple cars ahead of me, and they're moving quick. And it seems like they're going to continue to open up stores, and they're doing relatively well. So I don't see that really taking too big of a hit. But once again, I'd be curious to see what happens on the 7th.
Cool. All right. So I was thinking we should go over some interesting Rocket Lab news, and then we could take a look at earnings projections because earnings is in like 5 days or something. It's pretty crazy. So here we go. We had let me just make sure my screen is shared. So we had the 51st launch of Rocket Lab, which ended up being in August. So no launches in July. And this launch, Matt, I actually watched the replay of your live stream. It was very energetic. I really liked it. You did a good job on that live stream.
Thank you. Much appreciated. I thought it was just a normal stream, but very good.
Yeah, it was very good energy. I thought maybe I'm just not used to your live streams, but whatever. But here we go. There was one. So it was a picture perfect launch, except for one moment. I don't know if you I don't remember you mentioning it in your live stream. I was on my daughter's 10th birthday party, and I was just like having an eye on Twitter, and then I saw somebody like posting a picture of the launch and said like, this didn't look normal, and I got like a heart attack. And then I saw that Rocket Lab posted like perfect orbit, you know, like, and I was like, okay. So I just want to show, it's a very quick video. It's basically somehow at stage separation. It looks like something pushed the engine, and it was like gimbaling a little bit too, or like shaking a little bit too much. I don't know if you guys caught that. Let me know in the comments if you saw it. I'm just gonna play it. And here you will see that like now the engine is shaking a bit, and it doesn't look like a lot. And at first I thought that it was weird that investors pointed this out, because investors are normally not rocket scientists. But even Peter Beck answered on it and says a little bit of tip off during separation. We'll take a look at it. We have very wide bounds on this, but we would like them clearer than that. So any thoughts for you guys on the launches? How are the launches looking? And any thoughts on this particular incident, and how significant do you think this is?
I mean, it's kind of hard. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
No, okay, yeah. I watched it during the stream, and initially, like, I saw it out of the corner of my eye, and I thought like maybe I just didn't catch it right. But then when people started noting, like, did that just shake like the camera or whatever? And then I saw it on Twitter again, and so I definitely did see that, and I agree. I mean, I'd like it a little bit cleaner. And the thing that's a little bit confusing to me was, if you looked on the left camera, it almost looked like you see the stage one like almost veer off again. So it's like as if you had stage one separate, and stage two was kind of like not having too much inertia to go forward. And then when it did finally like boost off again, that stage one kind of like comes off into the rear and almost like hits the stage two again. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting sort of launch, and I'm kind of curious if they'll speak on it during their earnings, because normally they're pretty good about, you know, owning up to any sort of anomalies or anything like that. So I'm kind of curious what they actually end up saying, because I still don't 100% understand what exactly happened.
So I'm just replaying it so people can see. It's in this camera. If you look there it is. Like the first stage just went by. And it's also interesting because, you know, we're used to like 1,000 perfect launches from Rocket Lab, and you know, now it feels like there was something that was slightly off usual. But I'm very happy that we get this kind of anomalies, and not like the rocket flying sideways and, you know, flying up, turning back, and crash landing into the launch site. So yeah, Scott, what did you think?
I mean, it's hard to tell from the perspective if the booster is at an odd angle or if the second stage is an odd angle, but it looks too close for comfort. And I wish I remember the source, but somebody was even saying like this could be the means for the Electron being grounded. And I'm not in that camp, but I am a little bit concerned that maybe the next launch takes an extra week or two. Do you guys think there could be any sort of repercussion like that? Or do you think it's kind of like, you know, this is why Rocket Lab has the redundancies in case something goes wrong, then the other things don't go wrong, kind of an idea?
I mean, based on Peter Beck's answer, the way I understand it is that they have a wide margin for this to happen, right? So like, obviously Peter Beck doesn't like when, you know, you have, let's say something can go to 100 and it's fine, and then it went to 80, so it didn't like become an issue. But I guess he likes it when it only goes to like 20, right? Mm-hmm. So and I think that these FAA investigations, they get triggered when, you know, there is a personal, like people are in danger. And I think that that's also why SpaceX was able to go so fast back into launching after their last anomaly, because the anomaly happened while they were in orbit, and there was like no like there was no like possibility of personal injury involved, so it went really quick. Scott, you usually track the number of, I saw this tweet from you, I thought it was really good, the number of days between launches and the Electron success rate. Do you want to say a few words on this, like where we're at with this recent launch?
Yeah, so it was a little bit higher than usual. The number of days between the two most recent launches, I think it landed at 40 days in between. 42, it looks like. And excluding that one, I mean, the last few are average, like the last, we'll call it like 8 or so, we're averaging about 20 days. So this one was quite a bit of a lag between the two launches, but you know, that was largely due to the customer not being quite ready in time. And it looks like Capella will be next up again. I saw a post by I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Beav Invests, and they mentioned that the next mission on Rocket Lab's website is actually set to be Capella again. So looks like whatever was the issue, they've got sorted out and they're back on track again. And then as far as the success rate, we're at 92.16%, which is not quite the record. I think assuming the next launch is successful, I think that's what will take us to a new record for the highest Electron success rate.
I have a question. I like on this one, do you count the first launch as successful or unsuccessful?
Unsuccessful. I know I shouldn't, but
okay.
I do. Like it's because I track like Astra. Well, I tracked Astra. I got Firefly in there, Relativity, and kind of any other like small launcher that I take seriously. They're all kind of follow a similar cadence. So it's just like a binary, like, did you deliver them to this proper orbit or not? So
yeah. Okay. And how do we fare against other like SpaceX and other companies with the success rate?
I mean, SpaceX, it's hard to topple, and then all the other ones are just it's more like the ones that I track are the ones that don't get enough coverage, so it is mostly just the small trackers. And then you have like Firefly, which is at like, what are they, 40%, I guess 40% after the most recent launch. So
of successful, like success rate.
Yeah.
Wow, that's very low.
So,
okay.
Yeah, that's why when people are like, "Oh, but Firefly's coming," I'm like, their cadence is picking up, but they still have a track record of under delivery to kind of overcome before I could say like they're a true competitor, right? But I really like this graphic. Yeah,
and they do that kind of Astra thing where they're like, "Oh, we've had," I think they claim like 3 or 4 successful launches, but it's like your satellite's deorbited after like 2 or 3 days. Like they're supposed to be up there for years. That's not success, you know. So
yeah, a little bit interesting. But yeah, I did see you're right, on the website they did update for Capella. It said August 2024, so hopefully sometime this month. And it's a sky full of stars, which I don't really like that name, but
yeah.
But if you get past the SARS piece, then it makes sense. Yeah.
I'm not sure where that leaves Black Sky's launch then too, because Black Sky's, I guess, 7th launch with Rocket Lab was supposed to be in July, and now that's August. But you know, who knows?
Been a minute for Black Sky. Yeah.
Well, in 5 days, we're going to get an update on not on who, but at least on how many launches they anticipate in this quarter. Cool. Next big news of the week is I think it didn't get the attention that I think it deserved, but the 2 spacecraft that are going to fly on the Escapade mission are done and shipped and boxed. And that is obviously a lot of revenue recognition for the Space System division. Unfortunately, I mean, I don't know how they do in the accounting because they did miss the end of Q2. So like the revenue would be recognized in Q3, but maybe they were able to do something in the accounting to recognize a lot of it in Q2. But that's not so important. A big mission is done, and now they have engineers and factories freed up to begin work on other really cool space systems work. So what did you guys? Okay, so do you guys think that New Glenn is going to be ready? And if it's ready, it's going to. It's very soon. It's supposed to fly in September. It's in a month from now. And do you think that that launch is going to be successful, or or Rocket Lab is just going to get the order of these two satellites again from NASA to rebuild it?
I mean, I think it'll be ready. I don't think it'll be successful. Hopefully, it hits orbit. That, like, honestly, even that, well, not call a success, but that would be a good step in the right direction.
So do you think that?
Sorry, go ahead, Vince.
No, do you think that they will, like NASA will reorder these satellites to be produced again from Rocket Lab?
Hopefully, it would be nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess NASA's probably going to do their rundown of the satellite piece and the payload piece, and they'll probably give it a thumbs up or thumbs down, and hopefully they don't couple it with the New Glenn. But I am hopeful that New Glenn will do well. You know, I don't wish anybody poorly in the space, and I think all competitiveness will allow us to continue to innovate and be better in the long term. So I guess it just depends on if New Glenn is successful or not. And for those that don't necessarily know, New Glenn is the actual orbital rocket for Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos's company, right? I think people might not necessarily know the original rocket is really just to get them up into space and really touch the orbit and then come back down, but not really to send things into space.
Yeah. Awesome. So let me see the next. Okay, so what do you guys think is next after this that they're going to focus on? Is it the latest contract that they won in December that is going to be the prime focus now?
The solar one? Which December contract?
No, not the solar one. I'm having a Joe Biden.
Oh, the SDA.
That's
the space.
the one. That's the one.
Got
yes.
it. There's two or three things that are up in the air. There's potentially some details around that contract. There's that, if you remember that first quarter, we had that big Solero contract that came through, the up to 150 million, of which they were only put 30 million on the backlog. So that'll be nice because, you know, our backlog we're hoping to get closer to 2 billion by the end of the year. So that'll help, you know, add 5% or so to that. And then I also think that there's a lot of opportunity to capture more SDA contracts in the future. I just don't know if we've gotten to that place yet. But not only just the SDA contracts for building the satellites, but also hopefully when Neutron, all the testing with Archimedes and everything goes through, we can kind of get an idea as to, okay, we will be on track for 2027, 2028 launches and for Neutron at least, and so we could potentially get the contract to launch some of those SDA contracts, which will be another several $100 million contract, I'm sure, because I anticipate you'll have to do at least 3 launches to get 18 satellites up into space. But I'm trying to think what other and then there's the acquisition that's still kind of looming out there. Have they stepped back from that? Are they still kind of both elbows on the table in search of that? Have they made any progress? Those are kind of the 3-4 things that I'm wondering after this big escapade completion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So then, did you guys catch that there was a Peter Beck interview with Bloomberg? I think it was 2 days ago. Peter Beck, a little bit of background. He was in Stennis, said that he himself is working on the rocket. And that can mean 2 things, that either they're in trouble and they needed the big guy to come in and help out the team, or that they're towards the very end where he thought that he you know, goes in and closes the cycle. I was we have an interview coming up with Peter Beck on Friday evening. I think it's Friday evening for us, and it's Saturday morning for him in New Zealand. And this is me speculating. So if he is going to be in New Zealand when we do the interview, I think he would only go back if, you know, things are going good at Stennis and maybe the hot fire is done. They didn't let me know in the email that he's going to be in New Zealand. It's like it could be that the PR team is still thinking with New Zealand time, because they did give me that the interview is at this time New Zealand time and this time in your time zone. So did you guys see this interview? What do you guys think about how close are we to the hot fire, and what's going on?
I mean, I think you nailed it. I think that's what he's there for. It was the beginning of last month. Brian Rogers, he mentioned that the hot fire is a couple of weeks away, and so like July endish, give a slight delay buffer, and that puts us like now, right? So I think that's what we'll probably hear on the call. I mean, maybe we said the same thing like 3 months ago, or like it's after the market closes, we're gonna get the hot fire video, and here we are 3 months later. But I think for real this time, I think that's why Peter's there, and I think that's what he's going to say on the call. It's like we're just there, engines lit up, showtime.
Yeah, I think for me, they're as of the 1Q earnings call, they were ordering long leads for the next set of 4 engines, right? So at this point, they're working on 5 engines. One that's on the test stand, right? The complete engine that's actually operational. And then the other 4 are probably in the process of being made and finished, or, obviously they have some things that will be out, and on contract to get, within the next, like, if it's a long lead, that definitely means 12 months out or so. So you have to think like there's, a lot of things that still have to kind of go into those 4 additional ones that they've kind of got on the backlog to build. And so to me, I think that they're just taking every opportunity to run through every sort of scenario as they can, because once they build these other 4 engines, these are going to be part of the ones that I assume go onto the actual rocket for wet rehearsal and to actually put up into orbit, right? So I think that they're just taking their time, and they're not trying to cut any quarters. They're not trying to just blast it as much as they can. I think they're trying to find out what's the best efficiency that they can make. They have the time, right? I mean, they're not sitting there being like, well, let's get one of these other Archimedes engines over here. They're saying, we have the time. It's not like we're sending this thing up next month. We have other things that we still need to do. Let's measure as many times as we need to, and then call it quits when we call it quits. But in terms of the actual testing and the actual final testing, I mean, we've seen fuel go through, we've seen gas go through the engine. So I'd find it hard to believe that they would feel comfortable doing that and not actually having a hot fire test. Maybe if it was, delayed a little bit, it's because they're still trying to optimize things. But I find it very hard to believe that they're not either imminently close to or have already done the hot fire test. But I guess we'll find out this week.
One last thing as well from that interview before we move on. Peter did mention that the launch is scheduled for the middle of next year, because that's something that was, the phrasing with the Neutron has changed so many times where it's like on the pad or launching or whatever. But before that, there was the mention of, we tell everyone the date is 2025, but it is a rocket program, right? And so I was like, does that mean you might be slipping into 2026 already, or what does that mean? So it was nice to hear that reaffirmation of middle of next year again.
Yeah, I agree. Did you guys catch that in the interview, he said that Electron was the first rocket to reach 50, and he thinks it's going to be the first rocket to also reach 100. And that for me was also quite significant, because I don't know if any one of you has the chart of the Falcon 9 scaling. Like, it is a pretty, like, the chart is very up to the right? So for them to reach 100 before Falcon 9 reaches 100, I think it means new contracts and more frequent, like way more frequent launches than it has been. And he wasn't even like saying like, we aspire and we would like to. It was like, no, we're reaching, the 100 also as the first vehicle. Mm-hmm. And also one thing that is interesting is Adam Spice, it ties in with this. Adam Spice said not long ago in an interview that the goal is to double the backlog. The backlog is still at 1 billion. Okay, Q1 it was at 1 billion. We are in August, the 8th month of the year, and to double the backlog, it kind of presupposes, I guess, a lot of contracts being sold. The same as, you know, reaching to the 100th Electron launch is also a lot of new contracts sold. So do you guys think that in addition to the hot fire test, we're going to get some contract announcements on this earnings call?
It seems like they've been announcing them as they go. Like we've got 12 Electron contracts, or I guess one was one contract of 10, but you know what I'm saying? Like we have 12 new Electron launches announced this quarter already. So I don't think we're going to see anything in terms of Electron, but Space Systems is, I think, what to be watching for in terms of backlog. And from what we do know, if you take Q1 backlog and kind of fast forward from what we can expect from what's going to be recognized in Q1, and then what's been announced in Q2 so far, or I mean, what was announced in Q2, we are still north of the $1 billion mark. So we're up like 15 million total. So there's that at least.
I think for me, going back to your 100 launch sort of goal, I think with haste being a part of that would be very easy. But I don't know if you decouple the two, right? Because technically one's built for suborbital, one's built for orbital. So I guess I'd be questioning whether or not that's inclusive of that 100 goal. But I think what we're going to see here, which is going to be very pivotal for the Electron original body, or I guess haste really, and potential for future contracts associated with haste, is in the third and fourth quarter. I anticipate there's going to be one or two launches for haste, and then the first quarter of next year there's going to be another launch for haste for the Department of Defense. If either of those, I think, go swimmingly, you'll start to see a large backlog associated with haste, and those are not cheap either, right? It's like almost a full Electron launch, if not more, because I think that you have to, I think that from what Peter, or maybe it was Adam that was saying, that it's almost like $10 million for some of these haste missions. So because of some of the extra, I guess, costs and things that they have to realize. So maybe the margins aren't as good or whatever, but $10 million in terms of revenue. So let's just stick with that. If that goes swimmingly, I think the cadence of those haste missions can go extremely fast. And with that, that'll be very nice, because then you also not only just get like a commercial side of the business, which we've been realizing with Black Sky, Synspective, and a few others, but now you'll kind of have like a defense side of the business that's really going to help ramp up. And it's not just going to be defense specifically for the US, right? I mean, if you think about our allies, you know, then you can think about how haste can be utilized in other places around the world, you know, to be able to help defend, you know, allies and things of the like. And if that's the case, then you might get larger contracts in other ports opening up, spaceports opening up elsewhere around the world to help defend those allies with something like a haste. So I don't know. I'm kind of curious, you know, what ends up happening with that piece, but I think that that'll be a large contributor to the backlog. But there's still many SDA contracts that still have to come down the pipeline. We've, I think, gone through tranche number 3 at this point, but with thousands of additional satellites that need to go out there, and you're talking about 18 satellites every tranche that they announce, that leads to dozens more of tranches that need to be assigned. So I assume
guys
that...
see that? Did you see that there should be an announcement of a contract on exactly earnings day? The Gamma layer satellites for I forget what the contract name was. So we might get one on earnings day.
Yeah, it's also possible. So a lot of things are heading well into the Rocket Lab space, and then also you've had some turnover at Firefly, so that doesn't necessarily look super stable at the moment as well. So we'll see what ends up happening. I'm assuming a lot more business coming Rocket Lab's way.
All right. So with this, that was all the news for Rocket Lab. So I guess we have been very nicely tying into how I thought that this episode would go, but I wanted to take like the earnings projections in the end. So I feel like this quarter could go, two ways. We could get a plummeting stock or a skyrocketing stock, but I don't feel like there's an in between. I'll probably be wrong, because if we don't get a hot fire and they come in with disappointing Electron launches, so let's say that they're going to say that in this quarter we're only going to do 3 launches, then we have had 4 plus 3, then we're only at 11 launches. We're very far away from the 22 that was initially planned for this year, and I think that those 2 would really plummet the stock. Oh, thank you so much, Curtis, for the super chat. So I think that these 2 would really plummet the stock. If we get a hot fire, some new contract announcements, it can also be that in the backlog they start. We know that there is the Solero deal, where they only counted 30 million in the backlog. Maybe they can increase that to, let's say 100 million. There is a reaction wheel backlog that is, we know that there is an order, but it's not counted into the backlog. Maybe that can be counted, and that would really send the stock soaring, I think. But what are your guys' outlook on this earnings? How significant is it, and what do you expect the stock is going to do?
I mean, since you touched on the Solero stuff, I think that we're going to see a large chunk of that that agreement become a contract now. And the reason that I think that is because we saw those, between the CHIPS Act and between what New Mexico is providing for Rocket Lab, that's like $50 million is going towards the build of an additional 50% in production for Rocket Lab's space solar products. So I would imagine that what we saw from Q1, where it was like 150 million, but only 30 is being actually like put onto the backlog. I would imagine that a large chunk of the rest of that agreement was under the premise of like, first you have to show us that you're serious about this. And now Rocket Lab is like, okay, well, we've got the facilities and now we have all this additional funding and like all this extra help. Like, so, we're showing you that we're serious. Now you can show us that you're serious too. So I think it's maybe a matter of like needing to put themselves out there. And I think they did. So I'd imagine we're going to see a big chunk of that become backlog this earnings.
Interesting. Matt?
I think that Q2 revenue should be okay in terms of what we actually see. I think the thing that I'm most looking forward to is seeing the cash flow come in based off of the MDA Globalstar contract. So they're actually hopefully still shipping those. I know the first shipment went out in 1Q, and you were able to see actually how close they were to kind of break even from a cash flow perspective. And so my hope is that once they start getting some of that cash in the door, that hopefully we are able to get closer and closer to that cash flow break even. So that way that 500 million that's on the balance sheet can actually stay on the balance sheet and not go to supplementing operating expenditures like we have been, I guess, since the de-SPACing days. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm mostly looking forward to. I'm looking to see if GAAP gross margins are still kind of in alignment with that. I hope, as Adam alluded to, that we get closer and closer from a space systems perspective to see gross margins creep over that 30-something% range. As he said, he hasn't seen a contract come through in a while that was under 30% gross margins. So hoping that continues up into the right direction as well. But I am kind of curious to see if they're going to be able to get that 22 launch manifest really something closer to it, right? And I'm also curious to see, because this will be the last quarter, at least if they continue their kind of precedents that they've set out. At the end of Q3 last year, they submitted. So we're talking about the October November announcement for the Q3 earnings. They put out the manifest for the following year. So we're actually only a few months away, probably 3 months away now from kind of seeing what the forecasted manifest for 2025 looks like. And so that'll be a lot of fun, because I'm sure you're going to see not only Electron, but you'll see Haste, and coupling that with maybe 2 Neutron launches going forward. So that hopefully will do well. But overall, I'm not really expecting any too big of surprises. The only thing I'm looking for, and I know Scott mentioned this as well, is the backlog. So really, to me, gross margin, how's the cash flow look? Are we still burning cash like it's somebody's business? And is the backlog growing? That's really the key things that I'm looking at. I think all the other numbers should come in line.
And what are your predictions? Are we going to get an up day on the stock or a down day? Just for fun.
I think it depends on the macroeconomic environment, honestly. Unless there's no major announcements, right? I mean, if the hot fire is announced and there's a couple big contracts announced, then I'm sure you could see a little bit of a tailwind for the stock. But I think macroeconomic environment, until that clears up over the next week or two, the volatility of that within the broader markets, more so what's going to drive the stock than the actual news itself. But I don't know. I really don't.
I'll play the contrarian. I'm going to state that if we do get a hot fire, I think we're going to go down, only because everybody's expecting it to like ramp, and it's gonna be like, okay, take the gains. Oh, where there's no gains. Oh shit, sell quick. So I think we're going to get one of those, unless of course
I could see that
there is something to kind of counterpunch that, which would be like a big space systems uptick for backlog. If it's just hot fire and like business as usual, I think people will sell off just under the anticipation of like, sell the news, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's like I'm going to use the word transitory. It's a transitory quarter, right? Like there's not, other than the hot fire, you're kind of just passing time to get to the third and fourth quarter, where I feel like you're going to get a lot more nuggets from the third and fourth quarter this year. Mm-hmm. Than you will from maybe this. Yes, we'll get the hot fire, but I feel like that would be, like you said, potentially the biggest piece of news. And is that enough to provide a lift in the stock? And I'm with you. It probably won't be, unless there's some big announcement like a huge backlog, or maybe a surprise cash flow break even or cash flow positive. That might excite some people. Like, let's say we get a huge tranche of capital in from all the money we've been spending in the MDA Global Star contract, and you get like this huge influx of like $50 to $100 million or something silly. And then you end up with a cash flow positive quarter, then people might get really fired up with that, because they're like, oh, it's possible, right? And so that might drive some people, but I don't think that's going to be possible. If anything, you might see like a slight break even, but I mean, we're only down by $2 to $3 million in cash flow last quarter because that big influx. So maybe that's a big surprise that could come out of nowhere, but I find that unlikely.
All right, I'm going to play the contrarian on you too, and I think that we're going to go up after earnings. And my reasoning is that the stock fell super much going into earnings, and that is usually a good setup for, tempering expectations of what is going to come out on earnings. I'm going to play. So you guys seem to think that we have a higher chance of going down. I think that there's a higher chance that we're going to go up. But yeah, this is just for fun. I've been so wrong on my earnings predictions so many times. It's not even funny. I feel like it's not a game worth playing.
No, not in the short term anyway.
Yeah. Oh, wow. We got a super chat from Johnny Wolf. I asked Matt too, but it would be awesome if you could ask this question to Peter Beck. Could we ever see Neutron do cargo transportation from one point on Earth to another point on Earth? Yeah, interesting question. We can definitely ask this question.
There were plans for the Electron to do that, wasn't there?
For Falcon 9, I saw that there, definitely I confirmed that there was for Falcon 9.
Maybe that's them. Okay.
Yeah, I don't recall for Rocket Lab, but I do recall people talking about it for Starship and being like, oh, you could do Starship and, you'll warrant all the other logistics companies worthless because you could just do it all with SpaceX at that point. And I'm like, well,
sure. Can you imagine your Amazon package coming on Starship
exactly.
in your backyard, and there's nothing left of your house after the vibration and fire?
100%. 100%. It's like you're still going to need last mile or even 1,000 mile, right? I mean, even for the next, say, I would say 20 years, even if you were to get, let's just say, hundreds of spaceports around the world, you'd still need so many, I assume, last mile or 100-mile transporters. There's no way that it would eat up everybody.
Yeah. I mean, like where I see this as super needed and useful is the military, right? Because if your army can be like, you can have 1,000 tanks or whatever in anywhere on the planet within 30 minutes, that's quite an edge, I would say. And there it doesn't matter so much how you land and where you land, and as long as it's in the vicinity, and the price tag also doesn't matter so much. So yeah. All right. I one last interesting topic that I want to see what you guys think on, and that is this tweet by Eric Berger, who is a writer for Ars Technica, a space journalist, and he tweeted, "A final decision has not been made, but now I believe it is more likely than not that Starliner's crew returns on Dragon. I asked NASA about this, and their reply was not denial, but rather we're evaluating all options." That is, again, a little bit of background. In 2014, ULA, which is, I think Boeing is part of ULA, right? It's Boeing and Lockheed Martin. They were attacking SpaceX and said that, I tweeted word by word that one senator said that SpaceX is put together by hay and held together by chewing gum, and if you go for SpaceX, then you vote for mediocrity instead of like perfection, something like this that was said about SpaceX. And Boeing got twice the funding as the Crew Dragon. Crew Dragon got $2 billion. Boeing got $4 billion. They were massively late. There was massive cost overruns, and now it looks like Dragon will need to bring the astronauts home, which is a major, major, major black eye for this business. What do you guys think about this? What's your reaction to this?
I mean, how long were they supposed to be up there? It was only a few days.
7 days.
7 days.
Yeah.
We're 2 days shy of 2 months now.
Yeah, and I read somewhere that it's rated for 45 days in space. That's the capsule, and it's even over that now.
Yeah, I don't think they're coming home on that one. I hope not, anyways.
I think to me, it just goes to show a lot of these businesses and a lot of these star programs were really invented off of the back end of government. And then sometimes you just have the lack of efficiency and the lack of, things really going through and handed from one person to the next, versus now you have some of these companies that are legitimately founded with their own money or with investors' money, and they had to think more efficiently and just be true engineers like we probably were back in the 50s and 60s, right? When we really didn't have the capital budgets that we do today towards these things. And so to me, it gives a little bit more light to, I think, the SpaceXs and Rocket Labs of the world than say like the big ULA, the big brother of the space industry that have been around doing this for so long. It could leave an avenue for, say, Rocket Lab to come in and fill that space, right? And I know they teased this in a few investor presentations ago, which might have been the 2022 investor presentation. It definitely wasn't last year, but they did kind of like make a stab or something, like they could get involved in some sort of people transporter. And I'm going to go back and look and see if I can find it, but it leaves the door open, right? Especially if this is going to be a black eye for ULA for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what's crazy is that they lost quite some money, as far as I understand, on the designing of Starliner. And I read somewhere that the new CEO might just cancel all the space programs because they're unable to compete and make money on them. And somebody asked in the comments, which I thought was a very good question, like, what do we think or is it good for Rocket Lab if Boeing leaves the space industry altogether?
I mean, yeah, right.
Yeah. I guess it's, like supply and demand. Like it's the same demand and like less supply to fulfill that demand. So it's by its very nature has to be good for Rocket Lab.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. That was all the things I had planned for this show. Do you guys want to give any last comments?
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Scott. Did you have anything?
No, I was just saying I'm good. It's gonna be a busy week next week. It feels like every space company is reporting within like a 24-hour span. So I'm looking forward to next week. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. So yeah, going back to what I was talking about earlier. So on the 2022 Investor Day presentation, slide 68, 69 talks a little bit about, and it has something that kind of looks like a dragon connecting up to something that looks kind of similar to maybe I should just share my screen. But for those of you guys that haven't been looking at it for quite some time, I mean, I'm not talking out of my ass here. I mean, I'm talking about when we've actually been looking at some of these investor presentations, and it was when they were giving a Neutron update back in the day, and they kind of said this isn't a capsule announcement, but they're looking into it, but they've never really mentioned it too much since. And so this is, Rocket Lab logo and something that looks like it's an International Space Station right here. And then that's really all they announce. And they go right back to, actually creating the rocket and the Archimedes engine, et cetera. But it's curious to think about, are they still in the running? And I've been talking about this quite a bit, or at least mentioned it a few times, where Artemis is still in its infancy as a total program for NASA, and they've gotten Artemis 2, 3, 4, and maybe 5, I think, announced. So that means Firefly, Blue Origin, and SpaceX all have lunar landers, or at least partnering to get the space capsules to the moon, right? Part of the Artemis missions, but they haven't announced Artemis 6+, right? And so it could leave that opportunity for Rocket Lab to come in. And I don't think that it's very far-fetched to think that if you have the capability of creating great satellites like they do and creating great rockets like they do, could they have the capability of being part of the Artemis missions going forward? And I think that's something to definitely consider.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Peter might have some aces up his sleeve that he doesn't want to share with us until it's time.
Yeah, I mean, especially if Firefly isn't able to meet their obligations and that gets delayed and SpaceX comes forward, then it might leave a slot where Rocket Lab could actually potentially be in, right? Because I think Firefly was supposed to be, I think next year, it was supposed to be on Artemis, the next Artemis flights. And Rocket Lab was helping design the solar panels for that with Solero, and then their ASI was supposed to help with the software for that lunar lander, the Blue Ghost lander from Firefly. And if that doesn't go through because of what's going on at Firefly at the moment, then that might leave a space for SpaceX to come in and replace them for that particular mission, but it might leave an opening in the latter years for Rocket Lab.
Matt, you're talking about Blue Ghost 1, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
I believe that is launching with SpaceX.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Last that we know is November
this year.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah, and that was mentioned June 25th. So
yeah, I'm still trying to understand. I need to go back and look because, I know the lunar part of it is Firefly, but who's actually launching it, I don't know 100%. So it sounds like SpaceX, like you said. But I'm kind of curious, because I know New Glenn is supposed to help as well. So I don't know if Blue. I need to do more research as to, is Amazon going to create a lunar lander themselves for their Blue Origin Artemis missions, which I think is Artemis 4 or 5. I don't know. I need to do more research.
Can you guys help me understand one thing? Because on all the lunar landers, as far as I understand, it's billions and billions of dollars for even one rover, if I'm not mistaken. And why do companies that have very little capital and they're not finish developing rockets, go for trying to build a lunar lander, which is super capital intense and has a high likelihood of not working. And I don't like it doesn't have a lot of commercial applications either. Like it's either NASA reorders it or they don't, and that's it.
I couldn't tell you. Seems like they just kind of wanted to do everything. Like Firefly, even they had like another, like, I don't know what you'd call it, like space plane, or something called Gamma. They're trying to do that as well on top of Alpha, on top of Beta, which is now MLV, on top of
and on top of being
landers.
cash flow positive next year.
Oh yeah, you know it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just don't get it, because it's not a, like, I understand if you have a lot of money and then, you know, you want to give it a shot and see if it's like a future thing for your company. But if you're like anyways running out of money and everything else is burning so much money, like why even take this up? Like, I just don't see the commercial rationale, but maybe I'm wrong. Cool. Well, all right. I think this is a good point to end. So Rocket Lab earnings is on Thursday. Is any of you going to live stream it?
My hope was to in the afternoon. I have a pretty light Thursday afternoon, so I might come home early and live stream it if nobody else is. So
maybe we can. Maybe I can share your live stream and like join it.
So for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'll be able to do it also. Yeah. And then there is an interview coming up with Sir Peter Beck, which I think is Friday for us and Saturday for New Zealand. So we're going to be speaking to Peter Beck from the future, and he should let us know how Rocket Lab stock price changes from Saturday morning to from Friday evening. I'm sure it's a huge change. And other than that, I wish everyone a good week. Thank you so much for being here. Please show some love to these two gents who came to the stream. All the YouTube data is in the description box below. And yeah, see you guys on the earnings.
Good luck, everyone.
Ciao, ciao.
Cheers.
Matt, can you stay a little bit?
I'm in trouble now.
Yes. All right. Ciao, ciao.